My name is Paul Chandler. I am 61 years old, and for 20 years I was the man who paid for the Christmas everyone said I ruined. That is a strange thing to admit out loud, but it is the truth. Every December, the hall, the food, the lights, the flowers, the cake, the rented tables, the little details nobody noticed until they were missing, all of it came out of my account. And every year, after the last plate was cleared and the last photo was taken, somehow I still became the problem. This year, I heard my son-in-law tell the neighbors that my family only breathed easier when I was not around, while my own card was paying for the party he was standing in. Something inside me went very quiet. At 6 o'clock that evening, my phone started to ring. Not one call, one after another, then another, until the screen barely had time to go dark. I did not show up this year, and I did not pay a single cent. I knew there would be consequences. I just never expected the truth to land the way it did. Before I take you back to that night, do me one small favor. Take a second to like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is where you are. It helps more than you know. Now let me take you back to last December, to the night everything I had carried for 20 years finally cracked open. The planning meeting was at Diane's house, on the second Saturday of December. Diane had a clipboard. My daughter always had a clipboard. She stood at the head of her own dining table and read out our jobs like a foreman on a job site. Danny would haul the tables. Greg would handle the bar. Aunt Ruth would bring the pie she always brought. Then she got to me. "Dad, you don't have to do anything," Diane said. She smiled the smile she used in front of people. "Just show up on time and try not to talk like last year." Greg laughed into his coffee. It was a short, easy laugh, the kind people give when they know the room is already on their side. I sat there in the chair nobody else wanted, near the kitchen door, and I nodded. "All right," I said. "I'll be on time." I did not say the rest. I never said the rest. Because 40 minutes earlier, before any of them were even awake, I had already signed the deposit check for the banquet hall, $3,200, made out to Smith Hall Events. Same place, same December, same as always. Nobody asked who paid it. That was the part nobody ever asked. I drank my coffee. I listened to my daughter explain how the night would run, how the photos would be staged, how the seating would go. I noticed my chair was at the far end again, past the kids' table, near the door. Try not to talk like last year. I kept turning that over in my mind. What had I done last year? I genuinely could not tell you. But the way she said it, soft and bright, you would have thought I had ruined something sacred. On the drive home, my phone buzzed against the cup holder. I glanced down at a stoplight. It was a text from the bank. Deposit cleared, $3,200. I stared at it longer than I should have. Long enough that the light had already turned green before I moved. The man who ruined Christmas. That was what I had become somewhere along the way. It started small. It always starts small. 3 years before, Diane handed me the ham 40 minutes before dinner and told me to glaze it. I am a man who reads instructions. I followed hers exactly. It came out dry. By the time the guests sat down, the story had already changed. Dad insisted on doing the ham, she told the table. I told him not to. She had not told me not to. She had handed it to me. But the room laughed, and I let it go. 2 years before, I told a story over dessert about pulling wire in an old farmhouse. It was the kind of story that came from the work I had done my whole life. Maybe it was a little long. Maybe I took too much time with the details. Greg checked his watch where everyone could see it. Diane touched my arm and said, "Okay, Dad, let people eat." Last year, I do not even remember the crime. A wrong word, a wrong look, maybe a sentence that came out too slowly. By morning, it was settled fact. I had made things awkward again. Here is the part that took me 20 years to see. Every single time I ruined something, there would be a phone call the next day. Gentle, apologetic almost. "Dad, since the dinner got a little rough, would you mind covering the extra catering, just to smooth it over?" And I always did, because smoothing it over felt like being needed. I never connected the two things. The blame in the evening, the bill in the morning, year after year, the same rhythm. And I danced to it, without ever hearing the music. It took 20 years for me to finally see the pattern laid out flat. Once you see a thing like that, you cannot stop seeing it. I just did not know yet how far down it went. You should meet them the way I saw them, around a table, because that was where this family did all its real work. Diane sat at the head now, 38 years old, married well, dressed like the photo she would later post online. My daughter could run a room. She decided who was happy and who was the problem, and somehow it was never her. Greg sat to her right, my son-in-law, 41 years old, firm handshake, loud confidence, a man who talked over people like it was a sport. He sold commercial real estate and treated every dinner like a closing. Then there was Danny, my son, 34, grease under his nails, the only honest face at the table. He fixed engines for a living, and never once pretended I was anything but his father. And there was Aunt Ruth, my sister, 64, sharp as a tack, the one person in that room who had earned everyone's respect and never asked for it. That night, mid-December, we sat for supper at Diane's. Danny set down his fork and said, "You know, Dad does a lot more than people realize." "Danny," Diane said, without even looking up, "pass the rolls." He passed the rolls. Greg leaned back, hooked one arm over his chair, and looked at me like I was furniture. Let the grown-ups handle it, Paul, he said. You just sit there and stay warm. The table chuckled. I watched my son's jaw tighten. I said nothing. 20 years of saying nothing has a sound, if you listen for it. Across the table, Ruth set down her water glass. She did not laugh. She looked straight at me, the way she had looked at me since we were kids, in a house with thin walls. How long? She asked, quiet enough for just us. Are you going to take this? I did not have an answer. Not yet. Here's what you have to understand about a man like me. I never wanted to be at the head of the table. I just wanted to belong somewhere along it. My wife, Carol, passed 20 years ago. Diane was 18. Danny was 14. After Carol died, the house went so quiet I thought the silence might swallow us. So I did the only thing I knew how to do. I kept the lights on. I kept the food coming. I kept Christmas alive, because Carol had loved Christmas. As long as the family came home for it, I could tell myself we were still a family. That was the deal I made in my own head. Pay for the gathering, and you get to keep the people. Nobody ever told me that was not how it worked. 2 weeks before that supper, I had sat in a doctor's office. He showed me a picture of my heart on his screen and used the word strain. He told me to cut back. Less lifting. Less stress. What's eating at you, Paul? He asked. I did not tell him about the clipboard. My pension covered my needs and not much past them. Every December, I quietly went past them anyway. I told myself it was love. Maybe some of it was. Then, over that same supper, Diane mentioned, light as anything, that Greg had a project coming up and that Danny might pitch in with a loan. My son, who saved in a coffee can. They had done it to him before, and something cold settled in my chest, right where the doctor had said the strain was. If I did not stop this now, I never would. They would bleed me, then him, then whoever came next. A man has to draw a line somewhere. I just had not found mine yet. There is a thing about being the quiet one. People stop watching what your hands are doing. For years, I had handled the boring parts of Christmas, not the fun parts. The invoices, the deposits, the due dates, the calls with vendors. Somewhere around the 3rd or 4th December after Carol died, Diane had said, Dad, can you just set up the payments? You're good with that stuff. And I was, so I did. The banquet hall, the bakery, the lighting company that strung the place every year, the rental tables, the linens, the florist. One by one, I put them on automatic payments out of my own account because it was easier than chasing checks and because being useful felt like being loved. What none of them ever noticed was whose name sat on those contracts. Not Diane's, not Greg's, mine, Paul Chandler, on every single one. I was the account holder, the payer, the man the vendors called when something went wrong. I was also the man who never told the family about any of it because I always just handled it. To everyone at that table, Christmas simply appeared. The hall was booked, the cake showed up, the lights came on, the tables were dressed, the flowers sat in the centerpieces. Magic, more or less. Diane took the credit in front of the neighbors, and I let her, because what father does not want his daughter to shine? I sat at my kitchen table that night and pulled up the accounts I had not really looked at in years. Vendor after vendor, autopay after autopay, all flowing out of one account. Mine. They thought Diane held the keys to Christmas. They had thought it for so long that it had become true in their minds. But every door to that holiday opened with my key. Every single one. I just had not decided yet whether to use that key or change the locks. I found out for sure 2 days later, in the worst possible way. It was a Sunday. Diane had asked me to drop off the extra folding chairs at her place. I pulled into the driveway, with my arms full, and came around the side of the house toward the back patio. Greg was out there with 2 of the neighbors, the Harpers from across the street. He had a beer in one hand and that closing the deal voice going. I stopped at the corner of the house. They could not see me. Honestly, it runs smoother every year, Greg was saying. Diane's got a system. One of the Harpers said something about how nice the party always was. Yeah, well, Greg said, taking a drink. Between you and me, it's better when the old man stays out of it. He just gets in the way. We carry the whole thing, me and Diane. He shows up and finds something to ruin. Then I heard her. Diane was standing right beside him, and my daughter laughed. She laughed easy and warm, and she did not say one word to correct him. I stood at the corner of my daughter's house with 4 folding chairs in my arms, and I felt something I had been holding for 20 years quietly set itself down. I want to be honest with you, because I have thought about that moment 1,000 times since. I was not angry. I keep waiting, even now, to feel the anger, and it never quite comes. What I felt was clear. For the first time in years, I could see the whole thing, top to bottom, with no fog. We carry the whole thing. The old man just gets in the way. I set the chairs down against the fence as quietly as I could. I did not announce myself. I did not knock. I did not confront them. I got back in my truck and drove home with the radio off. That night, I opened my laptop and started reading every contract, one by one, from the beginning. I am a man who likes a number. Numbers do not laugh at you. Numbers do not change a story to make themselves look better. Numbers sit still and tell you what happened. So that night, I built one. 20 Decembers. Halls and cakes and lights and rentals and flowers and gifts I bought that later wore other people's tags. I went back through old statements until my eyes burned, and I added it all up. The total sat there on my screen, glowing in the dark kitchen. I will not say the number out loud, but each year came to about what a decent used car costs. Stretch that over 20 Decembers, and you are looking at a paid-off mortgage, or the comfortable retirement my doctor wished I had. I had handed it over a slice at a time and called each slice love. I sat with that for a long while. Then I did the math that actually mattered. Not the money, the other thing. In 20 years of paying, how many times did I feel like a father at that table and not a wallet with a pulse? I could not think of one. Not one. That was when I decided. I was not going to fight anybody. I was not going to make a scene. I was not going to send a furious message or shame them in front of the neighbors. That was not who I was, and it was not how you win this. I was simply going to stop. This year, I would not show up. And every payment I had been making out of the goodness of a heart the doctor said was strained, I would put back where it belonged. But I would do it the right way. I would warn the family first. I would not leave a vendor unpaid or a stranger holding my mess. I opened a new message to Diane. I typed 3 sentences. My thumb hovered over send. Then I stopped. There was one thing I had to do first. Monday morning, I made phone calls. Calm ones. The kind of calls a man makes when he's finally doing the obvious thing. I started with Smith Hall Events. A pleasant woman named Sharon answered. "I'm the account holder on this year's booking," I said. "I'd like to cancel my reservation and cancel the automatic payment going forward." There was a pause. Then I heard keys clicking. "Mr. Chandler, you've held this account a long time. Are you sure you want to cancel?" "I'm sure," I said, "but I don't want to leave anyone stranded on the holiday." I had thought about how to say the next part. "My daughter, Diane Whitlock, is the one who actually runs the event. If she wants the hall, she can book it in her own name and put it on her own card. I'll give you her number." There was another pause, longer this time. "I'm sorry, sir. I want to make sure I have this right. Every year the booking and the payment have come from you?" "Every year," I said, "but not this year. This year, whoever wants the party puts their own name on the line for it." I made the same call to the bakery, to the lighting company, to the rental outfit, and to the florist. Same words, more or less. Cancel my account. If my daughter wants to keep the order, she can set it up herself, in her name, on her card. I'm not pulling the plug on anyone. I'm just taking my name off the bottom of the page. I want you to notice what I did not do. I did not stiff a single vendor. I did not cancel out of spite and leave a stranger holding an empty bag. Every vendor knew exactly how to keep the order alive. Diane just had to do the one thing she had never had to do before. She had to sign for it herself. It took less than an hour. 20 years undone in less than an hour, over a cup of coffee at my own kitchen table. When I hung up the last call, the woman from the florist said something that stayed with me. "Sir, can I ask, is everything all right at home?" I told her it was. Finally, Danny came by Tuesday after his shift, still in his work shirt, the engine smell coming off him like it always did. He stopped in the doorway and looked at me. "You're different," he said. "What happened?" So I told him. "The patio," Greg's voice, Diane's laugh, the contracts, the phone calls, all of it plain. My son sat down at the kitchen table and put his face in his hands for a second. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. "Dad, I have wanted to say something for years," he said. Every time, she shut me down before I got 2 words out. "I'm sorry. I should have fought harder for you." "You were one voice against a room," I told him. "That is a hard place to stand." "It's not right," he said. "What they did, what she did." He shook his head. "She's your daughter." "She is," I said. "I let that sit between us. And I helped make her this way. I paid for every problem until she stopped seeing them as problems. That is on me too." Danny wiped his face with the back of his hand. "So what do you need from me?" "Nothing loud," I said. "I don't need you to fight anybody, son. I'm done fighting." I looked at him. "I just need you to tell the truth if anyone ever asks you straight." He held my eyes for a long moment. Then he nodded once, the way his grandfather used to. "If they ask me straight," he said, "I'll tell them exactly what I've seen." There was something in the way he said it, like he had been carrying something of his own, waiting for the right day to set it down. I did not ask what it was. I should have. Diane called Wednesday evening, bright and breezy, the way she always opened. "Hi, Dad. So 2 things. The Petersons are bringing extra guests, so we'll need a bigger cake, and the florist wants confirmation on the centerpieces. Can you handle both like usual?" There it was. Like usual. "No," I said. "I can't this year." She gave a small laugh. She thought she had misheard me. "What do you mean you can't? It's just a couple of calls." "I mean, I won't be coming to Christmas this year, Diane, and I've reorganized my own expenses. Going forward, the people hosting the party will be paying for it." The line went quiet. I could hear her breathing change. "What did you say? Your own expenses?" "My expenses," I said gently. "The hall, the cake, the lights, all of it has been coming out of my account for 20 years. I've canceled my bookings. If you still want the party, you'll need to book it yourself. In your name, on your card." "Dad, that's... You can't just..." Her voice climbed. "Do you have any idea how this looks? You want to ruin Christmas for the kids? Is that it? You want to make everyone miserable over some grudge?" "I don't want anyone miserable," I said. I want to stop paying for a party I'm only welcome to fund. That is so unfair. After everything we do for you. I almost laughed. I did not. I kept my voice level, the way you do on a job when someone else is panicking and you are not. The hall will need to hear from you if you want to keep the date, I said. Same with the bakery. I would call them tomorrow. They book up fast this time of year. What are you talking about, Dad? What do you mean, book it myself? I mean exactly that, I said. Good night, Diane. I meant it kindly. Then I set the phone down on the counter, face up, and watched it light up again. And again. By Thursday, she had called in the cavalry. My phone filled up. Cousins I had not heard from since summer. An uncle on Carol's side. A family friend who just wanted to check in. Every message wore the same coat. We're worried about you, Paul. This isn't like you. Diane's beside herself. Don't let pride wreck the holidays. Think about the grandkids. One cousin came right out with it. Selfish was the word she used. Selfish. At your age, over money. I sat in my recliner and read them all. And I felt the old thing start to crawl up my spine. The guilt. 20 years of it knew exactly where I lived. For about an hour, I nearly folded. I am not too proud to tell you that. I thought, just pay it, Paul. Keep the peace. It is only money. It is Christmas. That was the voice that had cost me 20 years. Soft, reasonable, wearing the face of love. My thumb actually moved toward Diane's name to call her, to fix it. Then my phone buzzed with one more message. It was from Ruth. I know what's happening. I've watched it for years and held my tongue. Don't you dare fold now, Paul. Not this time. I'm with you. I read it twice. My sister did not waste words. When Ruth said she was with you all the way down. I set the phone in my lap. My hands were shaking a little. I am a steady man, but they were shaking. I did not answer the cousins. I did not call Diane. I just sat in the quiet of my own house, the one I had kept warm for everybody else for 20 years, and I let the phone ring itself out. It is a strange feeling, choosing yourself for the first time at 61. Greg did not call. Greg showed up. Friday night, headlights swept across my driveway. Then his fist hit my door, heavier than it needed to be. I opened it. He filled the frame, jaw set. That closing the deal energy turned mean. We need to talk, Paul. Come in then. He did not sit. He stood in my living room like he was appraising it for resale. You're embarrassing this family, he said. Diane's a wreck. The vendors are calling her like she's some deadbeat. You think this makes you look strong? It makes you look bitter. I stood there and let him run. You made a commitment, he went on. Every year, the same deal. You don't just yank it out from under everyone 2 weeks before Christmas because your feelings got hurt. What commitment did I make, Greg? That stopped him for half a second. You always pay. Everyone knows that. Everyone assumed that, I said. That's different. His face went red. You're really going to do this? Over what, exactly? I thought about telling him I had heard him on the patio. The old man just gets in the way. I decided he did not get to know that yet. The contracts have names on them, I said instead. Whoever's name is on it pays it. That's how it has always worked. You just never had to read them. This is a disgrace. He stepped closer, looming. Diane carries this whole family. Then she can carry Christmas, I said quietly. He stared at me like he did not recognize the furniture talking back. I walked to the door and opened it. The cold December air came in. Good night, Greg. Drive safe. He left. He had to. There was nothing left to say to a man who had finally run out of yes. I locked the door behind him. I was not there for this next part. Danny was. He told me later, sitting at my kitchen table, and I will tell it the way he told me. Diane went down to the banquet hall to rebook it in her own name. Sure, it would be a 5-minute formality. Sharon from the office sat her down and slid a fresh contract across the desk, along with a printed quote for the night. Since you're booking it yourself this year, ma'am, here's what the date runs, Sharon said gently. Hall, catering, bar, the works. We'll need a card on file and a deposit to hold it. Then she turned the quote around so Diane could see. Danny said he watched his sister's face do something he had never seen it do before. The color left it. Her eyes moved down the page, line by line. The hall, the catering, the bar, the lights, the flowers. Numbers she had never in her life had to look at. At the bottom was the total. Then Sharon, trying to be helpful, pulled up the account history on her screen. You've been with us a long time as a family, Sharon said. Same booking every December. She paused as she read. Always under the same name, looks like. Diane leaned in, and there it was, year after year, paid in full. Paul Chandler, Paul Chandler, Paul Chandler. She just sat there, Dad, Danny told me, staring at that screen like the floor moved. For the first time, my daughter was looking at the true cost of the night she had taken credit for her entire adult life. Not the fun of it, the weight of it. She didn't say anything for a long time, Danny said. Then she asked Sharon the weirdest thing. What did she ask? Danny met my eyes. She asked, he paid for all of this? Every year? And Sharon said, yes, ma'am, always has. Diane had never known those numbers because she had never once had to see them. So what did my daughter do, staring down a bill she could not cover 2 weeks before Christmas? She did what this family had always done. She turned to the next person she could lean on, Danny. She called him that same night. He put it on speaker so I could hear, sitting right across from me at my table. Danny, I need you to float me some money, just until January. The whole thing got complicated. Dad's being impossible, and I'm stuck. My son looked at me. I did not say a word. This was his line to draw, not mine. How much? Danny asked. She named a number. A big one for a man who saved in a coffee can. No, Danny said. Silence on the line. What? I said no, Diane. I'm not paying for your party, same as Dad. Are you serious right now? After everything? After everything what? Danny's voice stayed even, but I heard the years in it. After you told everyone I was the screw-up little brother? After you talked about Dad behind his back to anyone who would listen? There was a pause. I never said anything about Dad, and that was where my son surprised me. You texted me, Diane. 2 Christmases ago. I still have it. You called him a sad old man who buys his way in. Your words. I felt that one land in my chest. Not anger, just an old ache, confirmed. The line went very quiet. Delete that, Diane said. Her voice had changed. It sounded smaller. No, Danny said. I'm not going to use it against you. That's not how Dad does things, and it's not how I do things either. I just wanted you to know. I remember. He waited a beat. I'm deleting it after this call. I don't want to carry it anymore. He hung up. A second later, I watched him delete the message right there at my table. He looked at me, almost apologetic. I didn't go looking for that, Dad. She sent it to me once, a long time ago. I held on to it too long. He set the phone down. We're not going to win this by throwing her own words back at her. We win it by being the people she said we weren't. I told him I understood, and I did. Completely. Let me step out of the story for just a second, because I have a feeling some of you know exactly where I was sitting right then. Maybe you have been the one who quietly carried your family, the one who paid, who fixed, who smoothed things over, and got treated like it was nothing. If that is you, tell me in the comments where you finally drew your line. I read them. I really do. And if you want to know what happened at 6 o'clock that Christmas Eve, stay with me. The hardest part is still coming. Hit like and subscribe so I know you are walking through this with me. Now, back to it. The last 2 days before Christmas Eve were the loudest quiet of my life. Diane called. I let it ring. Greg called. I let it ring. A cousin or two called. I let them ring. An unknown number called, probably a vendor wanting to know what on earth was going on. I let that ring too. It was not cruelty. I had said my piece clearly and kindly. There was nothing left to negotiate. A man can only repeat himself so many times before silence becomes the more honest answer. So I did something I had not done in 20 Decembers. I took care of my own house. I cleaned the place. I put up the small tree Carol and I had bought for our first married Christmas, the one I usually skipped because I was too busy funding everyone else's. I strung one strand of lights. I bought a turkey breast instead of a whole bird, because it was just going to be me and Danny. Ruth called once, and that one I answered. You holding up? She asked. I'm all right, I said. And the strange thing was, I meant it. They're scrambling, she told me. Diane's calling everyone. The story keeps changing about whose fault it is. She paused. You know she's still going ahead with the whole party, right? That surprised me. Why would she if she can't pay for it? Because she's sure you'll cave, Ruth said. Her voice was flat. She told her cousin you always do. That you'll show up Christmas Eve, see the grandkids, and quietly settle the bill like you have for 20 years. She's betting the whole night on it. I let that sit. She was not wrong to bet that way. That had always been the safe bet. Not this year, I said. That's what I told her. She didn't believe me. Ruth paused. You're doing the right thing, little brother. Carol would have done it 20 years sooner. That got me. Carol would have. Christmas Eve morning, I stood at my kitchen window with a cup of coffee and watched the snow start. Light at first, then steady, the whole town going white and soft. Somewhere across town, the banquet hall was being set up for a party I had always paid for and was no longer attending. Tables I would not sit at. A chair with my name on it that would sit empty. I had no idea what they would do when they realized I truly was not coming. I was about to find out. Again, I have to borrow Danny's eyes for this part. He went to the party. I asked him to. I wanted one honest witness in that room. At 5:45, Smith Hall looked like Christmas always looked. Warm light spilled out the windows onto fresh snow. A tree stood in the corner. The string lights I had paid a company to hang were glowing like nothing was wrong. The neighbors came. The Harpers from across the street, the ones who had heard Greg say I just got in the way. Cousins came. Friends came. The whole crowd that made up the audience for Diane's perfect night. And Diane played her part. Danny said she was flawless out front, greeting people at the door, taking coats, laughing at the right moments, acting like the gracious hostess of a holiday she had no idea how to pay for. But Danny watched the edges. And at the edges, it was coming apart. Sharon, from the office, stood near the bar with a folder, waiting for a private moment Diane kept not giving her. Diane had scraped together the deposit to hold the date, but the balance for the night was due that night. That was the deal when you booked it yourself last minute with no history. A bartender asked who was settling the tab, and got a tight smile with no answer. The bakery had called twice that afternoon about its own unpaid balance. My chair sat at the far end of the table, empty, past the kids' table, near the door where they always put me. Tonight, nobody was in it. Danny said people kept glancing at it, asking where Grandpa Paul was. Diane kept saying I was not feeling well. I might come later. Each time, that brightness in her voice cracked a little more. At 5:58, Sharon finally caught Diane by the bar and opened the folder where two of the neighbors could see. And across town, in my quiet kitchen, with the snow coming down, my phone lit up. 6 o'clock exactly. The first call was the banquet hall. I let it go. The second was the bakery. I let it go. The third was Diane. I watched her name sit there, glowing and pulsing, and I let it go too. Not out of spite. I had nothing new to say. Then the calls came faster. Greg. A cousin. An unknown number. Diane again. The phone barely went dark between them. I set it on the kitchen table and watched it light up the dim room like a little fire. Then I made myself a sandwich. I am not too proud to admit it. A man has to eat, even on the night his whole life rearranges itself. Around 6:15, a different name came up. Ruth. That one, I answered. Hall, I said. Her voice was low and steady. But there was something underneath it. You need to come down here. Ruth, I already said everything Ruth. I know what you said. This isn't about the money. She paused. In the background, I could hear the party, the music, the hum of voices that had gone strange and tense. Something is happening and you should hear it with your own ears. Not from Danny, not from me, you. I held the phone. The snow was still coming down outside the window. What's happening? Diane is about to find out she is standing on her own for the first time in her life, Ruth said. And the neighbors are about to find out who really gave them 20 Christmases. Another pause. You earned the right to be in the room for that. Don't give it away by hiding in your kitchen. I looked at my coat by the door. You're not coming to pay, Ruth said, reading my silence the way only a sister can. You're coming to be seen. There is a difference. I picked up my keys. I drove through the snow with no wallet in my pocket. I want you to know that. I left it on the kitchen counter on purpose. For once, I was bringing nothing but myself. I parked. I walked across the lot in the cold, up to those warm windows, and I opened the door. The room turned. It is a strange thing, walking into a party your money built, where you have always been the joke at the far end of the table, and feeling the room go quiet because you arrived. The music kept playing. The people did not. Diane was by the bar, and she was not flawless anymore. She was pale. Sharon from the office stood beside her with the open folder. Two of the neighbors, the Harpers, stood close enough to have heard everything. Greg hovered behind his wife, jaw tight. Diane saw me, and something flickered across her face. Relief. Almost. Like the cavalry had come. Like Dad always comes. Dad, she said, taking a step toward me, her voice pitched for the room. Thank God. Tell them there's been a misunderstanding. Tell them you'll... She caught herself. Tell them you'll get this sorted. I stood just inside the door, snow melting off my shoulders, and looked at my daughter. There's no misunderstanding, I said. Calm. Not loud. The room leaned in to hear me anyway. Dad, you're doing it again, Diane said. Her voice sharpened, reaching for the old script in front of the old audience. You're ruining Christmas. You always ruin Christmas. And there it was. The phrase, 20 years of it, said out loud in a full room. I did not raise my voice. I had learned you rarely need to. I didn't ruin anything, I said. I just stopped paying for a party I was never really invited to. The room went so still you could hear the lights buzz. Then, from somewhere behind me, another voice spoke up. It was Sharon, the woman from the hall's office. She was not trying to make a scene. She was trying to do her job, and she was confused. Confusion has a way of making people honest. I'm sorry, she said, looking between me and Diane. I just need someone to settle tonight's balance. She hesitated, then added the thing that changed the room. I told Mrs. Whitlock when she booked. This is the first time in all these years the account hasn't been under her father's name. Every Christmas before this one, Mr. Chandler paid for the whole night himself, the hall, the catering, all of it. I just assumed. She did not finish. She did not need to. The room did the math out loud in a dozen quiet faces at once. I watched it move across them. The Harpers, who had heard Greg brag on his patio that the old man just got in the way. The cousins, who had texted me the word selfish. Friends who had spent 20 years complimenting Diane on a beautiful party. Every one of them turned slowly to look at the empty chair at the far end, the one near the door, the one with my name on it, and then turned to look at me. I did not say a thing. This was the kind of moment that ruins itself if you talk over it. Greg's face was the one I watched. He had been wearing this loose, in-control smile since I walked in, the look of a man sure the room still belonged to him. I saw it go. I saw it slide right off him as he realized the neighbors he had performed for had just learned exactly who had been carrying the thing he took credit for. He looked at the Harpers. The Harpers looked at the floor. Diane stood frozen by the bar, her audience reassembling itself in real time around a truth she had buried for 2 decades. Dad, she started. Let him finish hearing it. That voice was Danny's. My son stepped out of the crowd. He stood in the middle of that room, grease still under his nails, and he did not raise his voice either. He learned that from me, I suppose. I want to say something since we're all here, Danny said. He looked around, steady. For years, every Christmas, the story was the same. Dad had ruined it. Dad got in the way. Dad made it awkward. He let that hang there. I heard it so many times I almost believed it. Nobody moved. But here's the thing nobody mentioned. The man who supposedly ruined Christmas was the only reason any of us had one. He paid for all of it. The hall, the food, the lights you're standing under right now. Danny's voice caught just slightly, and we let him sit by the door and called him the problem. A few people looked down at their shoes. One of the cousins who had texted me set down her drink. Then Ruth stepped up beside him. My sister. The one person in that family nobody dared dismiss. I've watched this for 20 years, she said, and her voice carried without trying. I held my tongue because it wasn't my house, and they weren't my children. That was my mistake. She looked right at Diane. Your father is not the man who ruined Christmas. He is the man who has quietly given you one every single year while you let people laugh at him for it. Diane's mouth opened, then closed. For the first time in 20 years, nobody in that room jumped in to defend her. No chuckle, no, okay, Dad. No one touched her arm and steered the moment somewhere kinder for her. The silence belonged to her now, all of it. Danny looked at me across the room. My dad never ruined Christmas, he said. My dad was Christmas. I let my son's words settle over the room. Then I spoke, because some things a father should say himself. I'm not here to embarrass anybody, I said. That's not why I came. I looked at the faces around me, neighbors, family, people I had fed for 20 years without one of them knowing it was me. I loved doing it in the beginning, I said, keeping Christmas. After my wife passed, it was how I held us together. I felt the old grief move through me, quiet and familiar. But somewhere along the way, I started believing the only way to keep my family was to pay for them. And once you believe that, people will let you. Nobody spoke. I'm 61. My heart is not what it was, and I'm done buying a seat at a table where I'm treated like I don't belong. I turned to Diane. Not cruel. Just done. I'm not angry with you, but I am finished paying to be the joke at the end of the room. Diane's eyes were wet now. The performance was gone. There was just a frightened woman behind it. So here's how it goes from now on, I said, keeping my voice even and kind. Whoever hosts pays. That is only fair. And me? I will still come if I am wanted as a father, not as a checkbook. I let that be the last of it. That's all I came to say. Then I turned toward the door. The snow was still falling beyond the glass, soft and clean. Nobody stopped me. Not one person reached for my arm to keep the peace the way they always had. And walking out into that cold, lighter than I had felt in 20 years, I realized something. For once, I had kept Christmas by leaving it. The party did not recover. Danny told me people drifted out within the hour, the way folks do when the air has gone out of a room. The neighbors said their polite goodbyes and took their new knowledge home with them. Diane settled what she could that night and put the rest on a payment plan Sharon set up for her. Part of it went on a card. The balance would be paid over the next 2 months. The full freight of one Christmas landed on the woman who had taken credit for 20 of them. I will not pretend I did not feel something when I heard that. Not triumph, closer to grief. It is a hard thing to watch your child finally feel the weight you have been carrying for them. The story moved through that small town the way stories do. By New Year's, the version going around was not that Paul had ruined Christmas. It was, did you hear what they let that man's family do to him? The Harpers sent a card, an actual card, in the mail. Inside, in careful handwriting, they wrote, "We're sorry for what we assumed. You always seemed like a good man. Now we know why." A couple of the cousins called to apologize. The one who had called me selfish could not quite meet it head on, but she tried, and I let her. I was not in the business of collecting debts of shame. I had already had enough of debts. Greg got quiet. The thing about a man who lives on the impression he makes is that the neighbors he had performed for were the same neighbors he hoped to sell houses to someday. He had spent that currency in one careless sentence on a patio, and it did not come back. I spent that Christmas night at my own small table with Danny, eating turkey breast off paper plates, the little tree glowing in the corner. It was the best Christmas I could remember. Then, 2 days after Christmas, my phone rang with a call I did not expect. It was Diane. Not bright this time. Not breezy. Just tired. "Can I come over?" she asked. "Just me." She came alone, which told me something. She sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I had added up 20 years. And for a while, she did not say much. "I saw the numbers," she finally said. "All of them." "I know," I said. I made it easy not to. She turned her coffee cup in her hands. "Everyone keeps asking me how I let it happen. And I don't have a good answer. It was always handled. You always handled it. I never had to think about it, so I did not rush her. I have learned the value of letting a quiet sit." "Greg's furious," she said. Not at himself, at me. He says I made him look like a fool in front of the whole neighborhood. She gave a short, bitter laugh, like it was my job to keep him from saying it. There it was. The thing I had half suspected. I let it pass for now. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted, and her voice broke a little. "I don't know how to do Christmas, the money, the planning, any of it. You always." She stopped. "I'm 38, and I don't know how to throw a party I actually pay for." And I felt it then. Not vindication. The plain, sad truth of it. I had done this. Not the cruelty. That was hers, and Greg's, and the room's. But the helplessness? some of that was mine. I had paid for everything so long that my own daughter had never learned to stand. I had called it love, and in some ways, it had crippled her. You'll learn, I told her. It's not too late to learn. She looked at me like she wanted to believe it. After she left, the old voice came back, the reasonable one, the one that sounds like love and costs you everything. She's struggling, Paul. She came to you. She apologized, more or less. Why not help her out just this once? Cover the rest of that balance. Set up a little fund for next year. You have it. What is it for, if not your kids? I sat in the dark with that voice for a long time. It is a persuasive thing, 20 years deep. I actually got as far as opening my banking app. My thumb hovered over the screen. It would have been so easy. 3 taps, and I would be the man who fixed it again, the needed one, the hero of the morning after. That was exactly what scared me, because that voice was not love. It was the same hook that had held me for 2 decades. Help once, and I would be back on the line. Help once, and she would never learn to stand. Help once, and we would do this dance again next December with a different excuse. My phone buzzed. It was Danny. Don't do it, Dad. Whatever you're thinking about doing, don't. I almost laughed. The boy knew me. A second later, another message came in. Ruth, saw Diane's car at your place. If she asks for money, the answer is the same as last week. I set the phone down. I closed the banking app without doing a thing. It turns out the hardest part was not standing up to Greg. It was not walking into that party. It was not hearing my daughter say I had ruined Christmas in front of a whole room. The hardest part was sitting alone in my kitchen and not rescuing my own daughter from a lesson she needed to learn. Love, I was finding out at 61, sometimes means letting the people you love stand on their own 2 feet, even when every part of you wants to catch them. The crack between Diane and Greg did not stay quiet for long. Some things, once they split, keep splitting. I heard about it from Danny, who heard it from Diane. There had been a fight. A real one. The kind that does not get smoothed over by morning. It started over the bill, of course. Greg wanted to know how Diane planned to fix the mess. Diane reminded him that he was the one who had run his mouth on the patio where the neighbors could hear. You told everyone we carried this family, she said. You told them Dad just got in the way. You said he would pay like he always does. Greg shot back. That was your read, your father, your call. There it was, out loud, between the two of them. The whole partnership that had pushed me to the end of the table for 20 years turned on itself the moment the money dried up. Each one reached for the other to take the blame. It turns out a marriage built on someone else's wallet gets thin fast when the wallet closes. I did not celebrate it. I want to be clear about that. Watching my daughter's marriage strain was not a prize I wanted, but I would be lying if I said I did not feel the ground shift. The alliance that had run me down for 2 decades was no longer aimed at me. It was aimed at itself. They're talking about counseling, Danny told me. Or talking about not talking. Hard to say. That's between them, I said. And I meant it. I was finally, blessedly, out of the middle of it. For 20 years, I had been the glue holding a thing together that maybe should not have been held. Now the glue was gone, and everyone was finding out what was actually load-bearing. It was not me. It never had been. The next Christmas looked nothing like the 20 before it. There was no banquet hall, no catering bill, no rented linens, no string lights hung by a company. There was my house, the one I had kept warm for everyone else all those years, finally warm for me. I hosted. Small. I made the turkey myself, the way Carol used to, looking up half the steps as I went. Danny brought a girlfriend, a kind woman who laughed easily and asked me about my work like it mattered. Ruth came early and stayed late and bossed me around my own kitchen, which felt exactly right. And Diane came. She came with a dish she had made herself, a little lopsided, and she came with her hands empty of demands. No clipboard. No assignments. Just my daughter, quieter than I had ever seen her, asking if she could help set the table. Things were not fixed. I want to be honest with you about that. You do not undo 20 years over one turkey. There was a carefulness between us, a tenderness with bruises still under it. She and Greg were living apart by then, figuring out whatever they were going to figure out. But she was learning. That fall, she had thrown a small birthday party for her kids and paid for it herself. She had called to tell me about it, proud as a girl, and I had been proud right back. That Christmas, I sat at the head of my own table. Not because I had paid for it, because my family put me there. The grandkids ran around the little tree. Ruth told a story that made Danny laugh so hard he choked. The snow came down outside the same as it always had, and nobody, not once all night, called me the man who ruined Christmas. Late that night, after the grandkids had crashed on the couch and Danny was washing dishes he insisted on washing, Diane found me by the window. We stood there for a minute, watching the snow. I owe you more than I can say, she said quietly. I'm not going to try to say all of it tonight. I'd get it wrong. You don't have to, I told her. I do, though, just one part. She turned to me. Thank you, Dad. For all those years, I never once said it. I never even saw it. Her voice went thin. I'm sorry it took losing it for me to see you. There was no but on the end of it. No favor riding behind it. No clipboard. No project. No balance due. Just a daughter thanking her father, 20 years late, and meaning it. I had waited a long time to hear that. Longer than I had ever let myself admit. I forgive you, I said. Because I did. Not because she had earned it with a perfect apology, but because carrying it was heavier than setting it down, and I was done carrying things that were not mine. She cried a little. I put my arm around my daughter, and for the first time in 2 decades, it did not cost me a dime. And it was worth more than every check I had ever written. Here's what I learned, and I will give it to you plain, the way I wish someone had given it to me at 40. You cannot buy your way into someone's respect. You can only buy your way into being used. The day I stopped paying was the day I started belonging. Self-worth is not something you purchase for other people. It is something you finally decide you are allowed to keep. I keep mine now. I earned it. Everyone went home eventually. Danny and his girl, Ruth with her leftovers, Diane with her sleeping kids bundled into the car. I stood in the doorway and watched the taillights disappear into the snow. Then I went back inside and turned off the little tree. I stood there a moment in the dark, in the quiet of a house that was finally only mine. For 20 years, I had kept this place lit for everyone but me. Tonight, it had been full of the right people for the right reasons, and the warmth of it stayed in the walls after they were gone. I had kept Christmas all those years by paying for it. This year, I kept it by being worth showing up for. I turned off the last light and went to bed a free man. Let me step out of the story one more time, because we are at the end now, and I want to talk to you directly. If you have ever been the one who carried your family in silence, who paid and fixed and got treated like it was nothing, I hope my story gives you a little courage. Setting a boundary is not the end of love. It is where loving yourself begins. You are allowed to keep your own worth. Tell me in the comments, if it were you, would you have stayed home that night? I read every single one. Hit that like button. Subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. And check the description for another story I think you will want to hear. The one about the year I finally decided to sell the house everybody assumed belonged to all of us. I will see you there. Take care of yourself, and do not you dare spend another Christmas being someone's checkbook.